Welcome to the Clock Hour. I am your host, Marv Kennel, and I have a very special guest on here with me today, and we're just gonna call him Mr. Bob. Okay, is that good for you, sir?
That's fine. That's fine.
So first of all, I like to ask how you doing. I know I ain't talked to you in a minute. I talked to you, I think, the other day. How you been?
Doing real well, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, one thing about it, when you had reached out to me, and then we started talking, you had a lot of interesting information to share with the people. I was like, wow, let me go ahead and try to get you scheduled in. So here you are. First of all, I like to ask, where are you from?
Okay, so right now I live in Westchester County, New York.
Right. Okay.
Um, and as you know, and people probably want to hear, I I did 24 and a half years with the FBI as a special agent before I retired. And in 2012, I was charged with obstruction of justice, and I pled guilty openly because I thought it would help me get a lesser sentence, but I ended up getting uh, 15 years.
Wow, man.
I
So,
did.
what locations did they have you at? You were, I know, I think you came through Danbury also, right?
Oh yeah, I did. When I started out, when I was on pretrial, they kept me out in a Utah state prison that had a supermax. Well, their version of a supermax, and I did 21 months in solitary confinement.
And you being from the East Coast, way out there in Utah. So, with the federal system, they put you all over the country then sometimes, huh?
Yeah, basically, like your other guests have talked about, and you have as well. They call it diesel therapy. So I was going to court in two districts, one out in Utah and one in New York. So
Wow.
oftentimes I had to go back and forth, and sometimes it would take a week, sometimes it would take months.
Wow.
So I pretty much, I had the opportunity to try out a bunch of different prisons along the way. Some were the private ones, some were the feds, and I got to ride Con Air quite often. Got pretty
Right.
used to it. I think I should have frequent flyer miles.
And they run you through Oklahoma.
Yeah, I went through Oklahoma, and actually, I think because I was in law enforcement, they would stick me in that Grady County jail, which I don't know if people have ever heard about it. It's probably the worst jail in the United States.
Wow.
So I went there on four occasions.
Yeah. They didn't know what to do with you.
No, it was I have a unique circumstance, I guess, and I pose a problem. Like, as you know,
Right.
when when you have somebody who was former law enforcement, especially the FBI, where maybe 75% of the people that are incarcerated were put there by the company I worked for,
Right.
putting me in general population was always an issue.
Yeah.
Uh, However, um, I had a public safety factor for greater severity because of my training, but I fought it in court and I was able to get rid of it. So that's how I ended up going down to Danbury to a low and eventually to a camp out in Ferreton, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard of that place. Um, and tell the tell the people a little bit about your outlook on those the setup, the actual institutions, the
Sure.
facilities. So
Yeah.
this way, you can actually let them know that that's not the place to be. You were on both sides of the fence.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, one thing I learned going through the process was that once you're incarcerated, you're basically done as far as, you know, fighting your case or as far as changing things. Because what I learned was that truth and justice are very rarely in the same court.
Right.
And most people that go through their cases in America now, it seems like you're guilty until proven guilty because
That makes sense.
97% of federal cases are won by the government. And it's usually because the public defenders have such an overwhelming number of cases that they can't really look at cases individually, nor can the prosecution or the judges. The system is so flooded that the defendant has an unfair advantage. And because in the United States they have that term break the law,
Right.
where if you have, say, a 0 to 5 year charge and you decide to go take your constitutional right to go to trial and you lose, they can double that time. Whereas, like, say, Canada, for instance, if it's 0 to 5, you go to trial and lose, the max you can get is 5 years. That's just not the case in the United States, which, you know, has that almost like bully intimidation factor when you're talking to your public defender because hypothetically you get nailed like a street crime
Right.
and your public defender has 4 or 5 other cases and they look at you and say, hey, look, go to trial, right? But if we lose, you're going to get an extra 5 years. So if I can get you a deal for 4 years, let's take it because that's your best bet.
So that,
And when you hear your potential outcome, double your sentence potentially, you're going to jump the deal whether or not you actually committed the crime. Because you see 97% of friends get incarcerated, and you hear about people that went to trial and lose, and they get lots more time. Um, you're going to take a deal. And
so
that's why the federal government has such a huge win rate.
so they're actually punishing you for defending yourself.
100%. And I never realized, you know, granted, I was a counterintelligence agent, so I didn't really work criminal cases. And honestly, that saved me when I went into general population. Because you know how when you're
Yeah.
in the population, the inmates can figure out your case pretty quickly. They just call someone on the outside, they look it up on Pacer, so they know whether or not you cooperated. They know whether or not you were a criminal agent who made a lot of arrests.
Yeah.
So when the guys saw that, I really never made any arrests, that I was doing the spy game the whole time, and they got to know me, you know, I was forging great relationships with a lot of my fellow inmates.
Right. Yeah.
So
That's and I've heard that, far as you take it to trial, you get hit harder, you take a plea. I think that makes it easier work. Take the plea, take this, or you'll get this.
right,
That's
right.
crazy. I
Oh, it
never
is.
understood it until I got involved in that system.
And I mean, like you saw with your job, I I was shocked at the systemic racism that goes on in our justice system. I learned that I would say what 70% of the inmates were black, and that 80% of female black female in the United States have had somebody in their family incarcerated or know somebody that's currently incarcerated. 80%. That's an incredible percentage. I mean, I couldn't believe how many guys were there for low-level crimes where they actually needed therapy or they needed, some other kind of alternative rather than getting 15 years. And
Right.
then I went to the camp, Marv. What I learned was there were, white guys who had white collar offenses where they took, grandma and grandpa's entire retirement account, and they were getting 18 months, and the 24-year-old black kid who was selling, weed
Right.
was getting 15 years.
Yeah. And and it's unique. Even on my side, um, you point out what I was trying not to do while I was there, where if a staff member is under investigation, right? The uh, the white staff member, his would go away quickly. The black staff member, theirs took years. I
I
was a victim, you know, for something simple, and it took a year, and then they put a letter in my file for another year. So that's 2 years for what I was being punished for. And anyone else, they'd take care of theirs right away, boom, boom, boom. And they said, when you call a spade, nobody wants to hear that. And it took me, what, 13, 14 years? I'm retired now. It took me 13, 14 years when I spoke about it, everybody like, oh, no, no, that can't be. I've been at Danbury. I was there for 20 years. So I've seen different cases and different people end up in different situations. I've seen it. And, I came from the state of Georgia, and it was unique. It was pretty cool. Um, but then when I got up here to see that and how they did it, I was like, yo, this is crazy, because it wasn't fair. If you're gonna make it fair across the board.
Oh, I agree. I saw when I was at Danbury, I saw a couple situations with corrections officers and the discipline that they had to undertake. It made no sense. You know,
Right.
it it was allegations made by people that were applying for the same position,
Right.
and the severity and the quickness of the discipline that the CO had to undertake just was unbelievable.
And what year
Especially,
you was there? What
hmm?
year? What years?
I was there,
I think I remember seeing you. I'm not sure.
I was probably there from 2014 or 15 to maybe 2018 or 19.
Okay. Okay. I've probably seen you in passing, because I was down there for a minute when they first got off the bus, because it was all women before.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was all women. So that was a unique environment in itself. I, I stayed scared all the time. Don't talk to me. Don't talk to me too much. You can talk to me, but don't bring your friend. If you got to come to the office, bring your friend. Don't talk to me that much. It's
Right.
okay. But
Uh, it, I had an interesting. I worked in the recreation department,
okay,
and we had to put spin bikes together for the women's camp.
right,
So
right.
we hope the COs bring them up there. And I'm not going to mention the correction officer's name, but he made it pretty clear that working with the women was a lot more dangerous than working with the men for a lot of different
Yeah.
reasons.
On on a accusation level.
Yeah,
It was.
totally.
Yeah,
And
it was.
another thing that people don't realize is the federal law enforcement pay scale is backwards. So,
What do you mean?
so let's say you take an FBI agent who works criminal cases. The FBI um, has the opportunity to plan when they're going to go make an arrest, and the bureau is or was considered the best law enforcement agency in the world because they took their time planning when they were going to take somebody down. So there is the danger factor, but when I was incarcerated and I walked through a unit in Danbury and there were, say, 135 guys in my unit and there was one CO working,
Right.
coming from my background where, safety is your priority with what you're doing, I was shocked.
Right.
And then to find out that the pay scale was like a GS 6, 7, 8, or 9. And the guys were like fighting over a GS 10, who was going to get the GS 10 on the compound.
That was a 8.
I
That
was
was a
shocked
8.
because an FBI secretary is an 8.
Yeah.
So now you have someone, oftentimes women, working in a unit, say at night, where an inmate might pop off with another inmate, or
Right.
let's say it's something as simple as an inmate's fighting his case, and on the bail call he gets that manila envelope that says, "Hey, sorry, nice try, but you lost," and
Right.
it's his last opportunity for freedom, and then another inmate says the wrong thing, or he wants to attack the messenger.
Right.
That CO is in immediate danger. And yeah, you hit your red button or you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But I've seen COs hit a red button and it's taken 10 minutes for other people to show up.
Right. Right.
And you could potentially have, 120 angry men and one individual. Now that guy or that female goes home at night
Right.
and is making a wage that pretty much is borderline, poverty in the United States.
Right.
And it was just baffling to me, you know, COs, you know, they're just not paid according to their danger level.
You're right. And when I was in Georgia, the pay was McDonald's money, say 20,000. That's what they were starting with. And this was close to max. So I didn't get it. And okay, say for instance, I worked 11 or 12. 12 had 100 over here and 100 over there. And it was me and a female CO there, female CO there. And they let them all out. And it's just me. You know what got me over down there? I can talk.
Right.
I can talk. And I ask questions. And, I always wanted to know because I was never there to judge. So when you hear different cases and stuff like that, you'll be like, well, I think you were railroaded. So I would ask questions like,
Right.
not necessarily what you here for, but what you here for, and then they would just start telling me. And I worked in food service the rest of my time in Danbury, but I was in custody before where I would have 3 units. One had 92, one had 88, one had 86 or 87. That was 3 units. I was covering all 3 of those units. So I would walk half the night. And this was with women. But I was out of custody by the time the men got there. So I get it. And
Yeah, it's remarkable. And
yeah,
they always talk about, corruption. The quickest way to get rid of, you know, a CO is to take away the temptation.
right.
And the easiest way to take away the temptation is to pay them what they're worth.
I totally agree because I think I was in Georgia from 97 to 99. I worked at the prison from 98 to 99. And after I left, I was still in contact with some of them. That's when everything was starting to kick off and it was starting to get worse. I left at the right time, people with the phones and the drugs and everything. But you're right. They have compromising staff would have been easy down there,
Right.
because they were paying them pennies. You know what I mean? And it was just I'm ex-Navy. My integrity has always been important to me, no matter the persona that I have or how relatable I am to certain people. I know where I come from, and my persona was not everything when it came down to me being compromised or anything like that. But it was always kind of tricky. So let me
And
ask you a question. What are you doing now?
okay, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to you know educate people to how the system is and let the general public see that because I was on both sides,
Right.
um, the anomalies stick out even more to me. Like one thing that people don't understand is like, let's say take Geo Group.
Yeah.
Okay, so Geo Group runs most of the halfway houses,
Right.
and they also have CCM. The CCM's a private prison.
Yeah.
Um, do you know that 92% of Geo Group is owned by a company called Vanguard,
Yep.
and that Vanguard is a stock on Wall Street. They're a public company, traded, and that the federal law enforcement retirement system has Vanguard as one of the stocks that trade in their retirement system's portfolio. So think about that.
So you're putting the money right back into it.
Not only that, but we're basically saying that the more prisons that we have, the better the retirement might be for federal employees. So, that's kind of like you just keep feeding the snake. And the thing that we have to do is if we cut the head off the snake, then we're not obliged to feed it anymore. So
Right.
we need like moratorium where we stop building prisons because the more prisons we build, the more inmates we need.
That makes sense. I just from my experience, the structure is kind of off, and how it's structured from within, to the point where they pinning staff against staff instead of you being one thing I respected about Georgia, it was that's your team. If I was on second shift, that's my team.
Right.
We broke bread together and everything. We would do potluck and different things like that. But seeing both state and federal, you see the difference. In the federal system, they program the new recruits to go against, if you see a staff that's not acting right, report them, and they put them and let them know that they can be promoted by telling on the next man. But it's just so much. I'm working on my book now.
Oh, that would
And
be great.
we're gonna have to do this again, because you still got a whole lot more information on your head. My show is, unfortunately, it's half an hour, but you and we've talked before, so we know we can both go on for hours and hours.
Oh, definitely.
But
Definitely.
I appreciate you taking the time out, man, to educate people and let them know what you saw from both sides of the fence. And I'm gonna have to have you back.
Oh, please,
All
please
right?
listen. Just in closing, thank you for having me on. And one of the things that made me want to come on is how humble you are. And for me, being humble is what saved me when I went in,
Right.
because the idea that inmates or prisoners are terrible people, it's just not true. Once you
No, it's
show
not.
once you
You're
show
right.
that you're humble, then they accept you for the individual that you are.
Right. Right.
And when everybody asks me that question, oh, how did you survive? The reason I survived is because the other men that I met treated me with respect.
Right. Right.
So
So you have a good rest of your day, and I
thank you.
appreciate you coming out. This is for the people, by the people, about the people, the Clock Hour. And I'll be in touch with you, and we're gonna get back on here. All right?
Okay,
Thanks for
thank you.
tuning in. Appreciate you. The Clock Hour.